Election day now thankfully less than 2 weeks away, and a bunch of new numbers are out showing the state of the race. Are they more bad news for Donald Trump? We'll discuss and debate. Then the defense is rested in the Bridgegate trial, and the jury could get the case this week. We'll fill you in on how it's looking for Bridget Kelly and Bill Baroni, the defendants fighting to stay out of federal prison. Also, the latest intrigue out of Albany. Is Governor Cuomo throwing his support behind Democrats for the legislature, or will he stay on the sidelines like he has in the past? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in once again tonight for Richard French. Those stories and more with our panelists tonight. Dominic Carter, of course, is here, political journalist and author. And on the other side of the table, attorney, Republican strategist, and former vice chair for the National Black Republican Association, Richard St. Paul. We're going to begin tonight, though, with the presidential race, where one candidate went stumping for votes today and the other went to a hotel opening. All of this coming with just 13 days until Election Day, as the campaign now, thankfully, has less than 2 weeks to go. And the numbers are all still tilted towards Hillary Clinton, though coming back just a little bit. Clinton leads by in two new polls today, by 4 in a Reuters Ipsos survey, and she's up 9 in the ABC News tracking poll. Clinton leads by nearly 5 in the poll averages, and she's between an 84 and a 92% favorite to win in polling forecasts and on the betting markets. Now, as we mentioned, Hillary Clinton spent this day campaigning on this her 69th birthday, making her case to voters in Florida, where early voting has begun.
We can't take our foot off the gas even for a short time. Every vote counts. Just ask my friend, former Vice President Al Gore.
But with early voting underway, an election in 13 days, and trailing by almost every measure, Donald Trump stepped off the campaign trail today to celebrate the opening of his new hotel in Washington.
With the notable exception of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, this is the most coveted piece of real estate in Washington, D.C.
So, gentlemen, 13 days to go. Every sign indicates that Clinton is winning. Hillary's in Florida, where there's early voting. Trump's in Washington, D.C., where the 3 electoral votes, you can already give them to Hillary Clinton. He's not going to win that. Richard, was it a shrewd move for Trump to go to the hotel opening today?
Well, Trump is still a businessman, and he's respected for being a businessman. And he said it himself. He says, listen, I'm going to be at Pennsylvania Avenue whether I become president or not, and he's right about that. At the end of the day, this is important. Florida, Trump is leading. Ohio, Trump is leading. Those states are necessary for him to win. He's still in play, as and possibly could be the next president of the United States.
But Dominic, best use of Donald Trump's time today to celebrate the opening of his new hotel?
Absolutely not. In fairness, though, to Trump, he had several campaign stops today. That wasn't the only one. But with the last time I checked, when you're trailing in the polls, you should not be pumping your business and using your hotel consistently in his campaign, I believe 32 times, as Hillary Clinton pointed out in the press release, to pump your businesses. There's just something very slimy and despicable about that.
The polls are starting to close a little bit, at least on the national level. Is that something that Hillary Clinton and her supporters should be worried about, or was it always going to tighten a little bit in the last couple of weeks before Election Day?
Trump has run such a bad campaign. It makes you wonder, how could things tighten? I mean, given the type of campaign that he has run. But as Hillary Clinton just said herself in what you just played, if you don't think this thing can be tight, go ask Vice President Al Gore.
Richard?
Look, you made an excellent point. The race, while you think the gaps will be getting broader, they're actually tightening up. And look, there is still a lot to be concerned about, because there are a lot of middle-class white voters that are like people in Ohio who voted for Obama last time, who were thinking that Trump is representing them and bringing jobs back to America, who are concerned about jobs. There's a lot of middle-class white voters out there who hadn't participated in previous elections that you might see or possibly will see participate in this election and turn the tide. And we might wake up and Trump has won the election, because they're not being polled. They're not included in these polls.
And I think you may see some Republicans who said that they're voting for Hillary or voting for Gary Johnson, who are actually starting to come back into the Trump fold at this point. I want to get to a couple of other issues in the race today, as Trump continues to lash out at people that he thinks are responsible for hurting his chances to win. But the question is he hurting both himself and his party in the process? Trump has reportedly stopped raising money for the RNC, even though the Trump campaign was leading on the party for the Get Out the Vote and other ground game efforts. before and on Election Day. And he's also smacking Republican leaders who have wavered in their support, including House Speaker Paul Ryan, saying, quote, "The people are very angry with the leadership of this party because this is an election that we will win 100% if we had support from the top." This as the far-right website Breitbart continues to call for Congress to topple Paul Ryan as Speaker. Breitbart was formerly run by that guy, Trump campaign CEO Steve Bannon, who may very well return to that site after the election. And Richard, this has to be a bigger concern for rank-and-file Republicans like yourself, that Trump, in trying to stay afloat, may pull down the party with him, or at least Paul Ryan.
I mean, what we're looking at essentially is kind of a civil war within the Republican Party. Now, look, we have to understand that the Republican voters elect every member to Congress, to the presidency, so forth. And those Republican voters elected Trump to be the presidential candidate. So there could seriously be an issue with other voters.
And you know as well as I do that Republican leadership and establishment Republicans do not like the direction that voters seem to be pulling the party right now. How much worry is there among that Republican leadership that maybe they've lost their voters along the way?
I mean, we are facing the possibility as Republicans of losing the Senate and losing more seats in the House. That's a real concern. If Republicans are showing up at the polls and not voting for, if they don't show up, but if they do show up and decide they're not going to vote for the, quote, establishment candidates, that's a real issue at the end of the day, and it's a real concern.
Does it go deeper than just this election, Dominic? Because if Republican leadership can't count on Republican voters to necessarily, if the party continues to split, that's a real problem, not just for what happens on November 8th, but down the road as well.
Well, what it sounds like to me is that Mr. Trump is consistently, I mean, I respect your point of view, but what it sounds like to me is Mr. Trump is consistently setting up his scenario for when he loses the election. Mm-hmm. It's everybody else's fault. Soon he's going to blame his own campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, who's done an outstanding job in keeping him as much as humanly possible on that straightened road, as much as humanly possible. The conditioner there, the disqualifier, I should say. So Trump, you know, it's going to be the media's fault because they don't like me, even though the media built him up and made him what he is. It's Paul Ryan's fault. If only the National Party was behind me, I would win. But I don't understand the logic. And I know he's done things unconventional. But here's my point to you. Why would you not raise money for the party? And these are the people that you need to get out the vote. No,
he certainly should be raising money for the party. I mean, you took the Republican Party line. You are pretty much the head of the ticket. You should be raising money for the party. And there is some fault to bear in the Trump campaign because most presidential candidates have their own statewide operation available. Trump never did. Yeah. Okay. Any other I've worked on the Bush Cheney campaign before. 50-state operation there. That never happened, and so he needed to rely on the RNC. And so if he does not become president, part of the failure is going to be on his side also.
Last question for you, Richard, is that if Republicans are expected to lose seats in the House, and so the Republicans who remain will probably be a more conservative brand of Republican. It's going to be more moderate Republicans who get beaten in swing states and swing districts. That means Paul Ryan's going to have more pressure from the far right in his party. Should Paul Ryan be worried about his job as Speaker? Well,
look, you remember that Paul Ryan said, I'm only taking this job. I mean, he basically had to be begged to take the job. And he said, I'll take the job under certain conditions and that, we all can work together. That may be right, off the table, because at the end of the day, the constituency control the members of Congress because they elect them.
Let me put it this way, because I know you like and respect Paul Ryan. Are you worried that Paul Ryan will lose his job?
I am concerned, yes.
All right.
But why does Paul Ryan really care? I mean, as was pointed out, he didn't want the job from day one. They had to beg him to take the job, point two. Point three, he said, I'll only take it if I have my weekends free to go back to Wisconsin and be with my family. Now, it might hurt him in terms of a national image, should he decide to be on a national ticket again. But why does he really need the headache?
He'll be safe in Wisconsin.
It's an impossible job.
I think it would hurt the party in the long term, though, if the Republican majority in the House is a more conservative Republican majority and puts it further out of line with American voters.
It will, and that's one of the. I was talking to a friend of mine. That's one of the issues is that the reason why Republicans went with Trump is because they feel like Boehner and Ryan are the establishment, and they want somebody outside the establishment.
All right, now there is some worrying news for Hillary Clinton tonight, though not on the election itself. House Republicans are already preparing investigations into a President Hillary before she's even elected. They want to rake her over the coals once again for all the issues they've already looked into, including emails, the Clinton Foundation, even Benghazi. And yes, some on the far right are already talking about impeaching a second President Clinton. If the polls are right and Hillary Clinton is the heavy favorite to win this election, well, first of all, just in the abstract, is it fair for one party to immediately hold hearings into a new president before he or she has done anything on the job?
Hey, you follow the money, you follow the information, and if there's something at the end, then you should do something about that.
But if the American people elect Hillary Clinton, with all of this information that everybody knows about the emails, everybody knows about Benghazi, everybody knows about all of these stories already, is it right to hold her feet to the fire on that if the American voting public has just basically said we're okay with it?
But look what has happened here, right? The director of the FBI, Comey, comes out and says no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute this case. That doesn't mean that a prosecutor would not prosecute the case. If at some point in time...
It just means a reasonable prosecutor wouldn't do it. And the House Republican caucus is not a reasonable prosecutor. I think by your own analogy right there.
I'm just saying at some point in time a prosecutor could come along and say, yes, you mishandled classified information just like General Petraeus, and you should pay for that.
I believe it's called a circular firing squad.
You think it's going to damage Republicans?
That's all it's going to do. If Hillary Clinton, if she wins and makes history, the first woman president ever of America, and you're already putting down chips on we're going to try and take her out or stymie any effort that she puts forth in terms of her agenda, when she has a track record, I don't think you can disagree with this, of extending herself to Republicans. And what happened to, normally I believe it's a 60-day time period where a president comes in and it's a grace time period.
The honeymoon?
The honeymoon period. What happened to that? So are you telling me as president-elect, the first woman president of the United States, and you're going to try and damage her right out the gate? Fantastic. Way to go.
This sounds very similar to what we heard from Republicans in 2009.
Well, look,
first history-making president elected, immediately opposed all the way through. Do you think she's going to have it worse than Obama had it, assuming she wins the election?
I don't know, because I think that the Clintons, frankly, have better ability at connecting with working across the aisle. Obama at times wasn't his own best advocate. I think Obama said, listen, you don't like me, I don't like you, it is what it is.
I agree with that.
And that's that. But I think that Hillary Clinton is much, I'm not going to say the word smarter, but politically she knows what she needs to do. And the day after the election, the president-elect, if she indeed wins, it's my opinion, will start reaching out to members of the Republican Party. But, there's a but there. If she reaches too much, the members on the Bernie Sanders part of her party, the far left, are going to say, what are you doing? You're selling us out. Remember, you couldn't have gotten this job without us.
She's stuck between a rock and a hard place because at the same time, Republicans, the Republican constituency are going to look and say, look, Clinton is a very polarizing figure. And they're going to say, we shouldn't work with her. Well, let's just ride these 4 years out and then put up another nominee to take her out in 4 years. So it's a very tough situation to be in.
I mean, at some point, you got to start governing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, but look, Congress approval rate has been like at 13 for a number of years.
Wait, you said at some point you have to start
governing.
Yeah. Why should things change now?
We got this far.
This isn't the way it worked on Schoolhouse Rock.
We had 8 years of no government. What's another 4?
All right, we'll shift topics after a quick break. The Bridgegate trial is getting into its final phase, and we'll soon know the fates of Bill Baroni and Bridget Kelly. But what about Governor Chris Christie? Will he totally avoid prosecution? We'll get an update next.